Hey everybody, how are you all doing today? It's me, Michaela Valletta, live from Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and I am live on my IG page, Michaela Valletta Travels. See, it's loud. I'm going to save this video and repost it to my YouTube page, Michaela Valletta Travels. So if you follow me on YouTube, be sure to follow me on Instagram because I do post things on my Instagram that I don't post on YouTube. And if you follow me on IG, be sure to follow me on YouTube. So anyhow, I make this video quick because I gotta go experience and do some stuff. I've been working this morning. But I arrived in Santo Domingo last night, like 1:30 in the morning. It was easy breezy going through customs. Here they make you fingerprint yourself, give you your fingerprints and everything, but it was very easy breezy going through customs, very quick and fast. Santo Domingo does have Uber, but I took a taxi because the taxi driver got to me first and he told me he was cheaper than the Uber, which wasn't true because I paid about $35 US dollars for 30-minute cab ride from the airport to here, but on Uber it would have been like 21. But I said, you know what? Let me just, it is what it is. But on my way back, I'll definitely take an Uber. So Uber is not everywhere in the Dominican Republic, but it's definitely in Santo Domingo. And I feel very comfortable in Latin America because I always feel like even countries that are supposed to be dangerous, Mexico, Colombia, I felt safe in all those places because I feel like my experience in Latin American culture is that the men, they're always looking out. Like, people look out for you and make sure that the taxi driver drove me here. It was 1:30 at night. I had to get to there's a security guard downstairs. He made sure that I made contact with the security guard, got in okay. The taxi driver is rolling my bags for me. Won't even, even when, you get the taxi, as soon as you say you take it, they take your bags, they're rolling it for you. I got in the building, the security guard rolled my bags upstairs. I could have rolled my bags, but they were just really gentlemen. So a lot of security in this building, 24/7. And so let me show you my Airbnb, okay? This Airbnb was like about $52 a night, okay? So let me show you that. That's the point of this video. Let me flip this camera around. Okay. So this is the living room area. And I always love an Airbnb with a balcony, especially when I'm in hot places. So there is a little balcony out there, and I'll show you in a moment. That's the bedroom. And here we have a little kitchen area, and I've been doing work this morning. So you see my laptop and my Starbucks, because they do have Starbucks here, which makes me happy because I don't drink Starbucks coffee, but I do drink matcha. And so they had that, and they have Uber Eats. I ordered it on Uber Eats, and it was like $1, okay? When that costs like $6 in the US. So, yes, have this area, nice refrigerator. There's a little small half bathroom that I wouldn't use because it's too small and cramped. And it smells like artificial air freshener, and I hate artificial air freshener. I feel like Latin American countries, let me show you the hallway. Hold on. So this is out in the hallway, okay? But I feel like Latin American countries, they like artificial air freshener a lot. And that was also my experience in Senegal, and it makes me sick, okay? Got the fake flowers. I don't understand why people put fake plants in fake flowers, okay? Hold on, let me just show you the balcony, and then I'm going to show you the main bathroom. So, step out on the balcony. Of course, there's more fake plants. I don't understand it. Why somebody would have fake plants? They never do that in Mexico. Okay, so it's a little hectic out here. Nothing really beautiful to see. Simple little balcony, okay? Busy, loud city. And it's hot as hell right now. I'm about to go outside and do stuff I've been working this morning. Okay, so here's the bedroom. And then there's this little hallway area where you can put your things. And then here is the main bathroom. Okay, and lots of natural light, which I love. That's what I hate about hotels. I hate bathrooms with no windows and no light. Okay, so, and I love my little showers. Hope you can see that. It's just glass. No tub, no curtains, which is what I prefer. Shower curtains gross me out in rental places. Okay, so bathroom. Okay, so All right, so now you saw. So yeah, this was this Airbnb was $50 a night. I'm going to be in Santo Domingo until what's today? Wednesday until Friday. Okay. On Friday, I'm going to go to a town called Samana. I'm in an area called Samana to a town called Las Arenas. Okay, and I'm going to be talking a lot about that because when I travel, there's multiple reasons why I come places. I used to be totally against coming to the Dominican Republic because I grew up in a neighborhood in New York called Washington Heights, the border of Harlem and Washington Heights. So I grew up around a lot of Dominicans and never had a problem with them a day in my life. And growing up, I always felt like when I was a little girl, I felt like I was confused because I felt like they looked just like me and my family and they were speaking Spanish all the time. And I was so confused, like, Dad, I thought that person was black. And he's like, they are black. They're a black Dominican. And, Dominican is not a race. It's a nationality. Just like you have white Americans, black Americans, Chinese Americans, Native Americans. Same thing is true with Dominicans. You can have white Dominicans, black Dominicans, indigenous Dominicans, Chinese Dominicans. You know what I'm saying? So that's when I really began to understand the difference between nationality and race back then, which a lot of people still don't get. But when people say that all the indigenous people of the Americas died and all the Arabs and Tainos were killed, that is the biggest lie. Because, even growing up around Dominicans, it's like you can see it in their features, okay? When I came here last night, I felt like, oh, people look like me here, okay? I didn't feel like that when I was in Senegal, okay? When I went to Africa and I was in Senegal, I didn't feel like they looked like me or my people, my family. So people can say, oh, I went to Africa and everybody looks like me, but they didn't. Not in Senegal, okay? Sure, you know what I'm saying? But, and that's the whole thing, the whole, morena and negra. And there's a lot, the indigenous people of the Americas, the indigenous people of Colombia, South America, the Caribbean, the American South, are copper-complected people. They are this complexion. They are copper-complected people. Not that light-skinned, Asian-looking Native American that they always show. Maybe the ones that come from Canada look like that. But the indigenous people that come from the American South, the Caribbean, South America are copper-complected. And you can see it so vividly in the features of Dominicans. Their complexions, their hair. It's just obvious. And so, thank you guys for the compliments. So what was I going to say? So Samana, I found out about, I'll make this quick. I found out about this area called Samana back in 2007. In 2007, I was in New Orleans. My first trip to New Orleans, it was an Afro-Caribbean dance conference at Tulane University. And for 2 weeks, we were studying Haitian, Afro-Brazilian, Afro-Cuban, and Congolese dance all day, every day. And they brought an Afro-Dominican woman. There was an Afro-Dominican woman who came there, and she was from Samana. And she talked about how the people in Samana came from America, right? And I thought that they were all from Louisiana because she told me they did a dance called Bamboula. And Bamboula was a dance that was done in Congo Square. And I'm thinking, all this time I knew there were Black American descendants in Samana, but I thought they were from Louisiana. So I knew this history and I always wanted to go there. So when I decided to come to DR, and let me just tell you real quick, because there's multiple things I want to talk about on this page. One of them is how I travel, because I don't always spend tons of money like people think. I use Spirit points to fly here. So I flew here in Spirit, had like an hour layover in Orlando, flew from Chicago. It might have been like 3,000 miles, okay, on Spirit, which doesn't, that's the one thing people talk about Spirit, but Spirit miles add up very quickly. And you can take trips to the Caribbean for very, very few miles, unlike a lot of other airlines. So I didn't pay for my flight here. And then my returning flight, I'm leaving next week, and I'm flying back to New York, a direct flight. That's on Delta, and I use 6,000 credit card points. I transferred my points from American Express into Delta, and it was just 6,000 miles. Now, if you, so that's that, right? If I would have tried to book it through the American Express portal, it would have been a lot more expensive. But I transferred it to Delta, and I paid like $6 in taxes. So I didn't pay for my flights here. this Airbnb, $50 a night. What I actually did, because I don't know if you've seen my videos in the past about flying for free and credit card points, but I'm not going to get super into that now. But I bought a gift card when I knew I was going to pay for the Airbnb. I bought a gift card, and with my American Express gold card, personal gold, which gives you 4 times points at supermarkets, and so I got 4 times points for the money that I spent. And that's how I booked it. So that, okay, I'm going to spend money on this Airbnb, but I'm also going to get some points too, because I like to get points for every dollar that I spend, because those points can be used for travel, okay? And they can be used for travel for family and other people. Like, I'm going to send my dad to Costa Rica this summer, you know, with my points, right? So it's very useful. So that's what I did. But yesterday morning, my original Airbnb that I was supposed to stay at wasn't this one. My host canceled on me last minute, okay? I almost had an anxiety attack, almost wanted to cancel my trip, but I'm like, I know I can't cancel the trip because I'll lose everything, you know, my other reservation money and my, you know, I don't want to lose money. So, but they just, when the trips start out like that, it can throw you off. But I found this place last minute. But when they cancel my reservations, Airbnb can take like a week to give you your money back. But, and that's what they told me. So I'm stressing, like, I don't want to have to spend more money. But because I paid with a gift card, they actually give me the money back right away. When you pay with a credit card or a debit card, it could take days to get your money back. And that's a problem if you're traveling and you don't have a whole bunch more money to put out, right? So I got it back automatically. And then this place was $100 more than the other place I booked, but it's also because I also added an extra day on there too. And Airbnb gives you options to pay if you have good credit. This is the other thing about having good credit. Like, good credit can help you do a lot of things. But if you have good credit, you can opt to pay for it in payments instead of paying for the whole thing up front, right? And I had a lot of bills due, yesterday, okay? And so I didn't want to spend more money, so I had to pay this $100 balance, but I just paid for it with Klarna, which is broken into like 4 payments of $25. And so instead of having to put out $100 right now, good thing when you have good credit, right? And so Samana, yeah, so last night when I got here, I started listening to videos about Samana, and I'm going to, on my YouTube page, I'm going to post some of them below my YouTube video. So if you're on Instagram, if you go to YouTube and check this video, I'm going to post some of the YouTube videos underneath there. And I'll talk about it myself when I get to Samana. I'll get into the history, but quickly I want to tell you, this is very interesting, okay? Samana. It was actually a town that was, I'm gonna look at my notes, okay? And the other thing, okay, so it's a town that at the time, in 1824, or the 1820s, a bunch of black Americans from Philadelphia, okay, came to Samana. And they were invited to immigrate to Samana, Dominican Republic. They were invited to immigrate there by the president of Haiti at the time. And the reason why was because in Philly at the time, free blacks, those who had escaped slavery and those who had never been slaves, okay, could be kidnapped and sent down south to be enslaved. And there were a lot of signs, actually, that they would put up telling black people, you can get colored people attention. You could get snatched up and sent to slavery. And they had these ad campaigns all the way up to Massachusetts, okay? And the other thing was there was something called, I think it was the American Colonial Society. It was called the American Colonization Society, okay, in Philly. They were organizing to take all of the black people in Philly and ship them back to Africa. So there was 200,000 blacks in Philly at the time, and this American Colonization Society or whatever, they were trying to ship all 200,000 black people in Philly back to Africa, okay? The prominent blacks in Philadelphia, or probably the black people period, were totally against this, okay? They didn't want to be shipped back to Africa. And I put back to Africa in quotes because a lot of us didn't come from Africa, okay? History, and this is the problem with Florida, okay? And my roots are from Florida, okay? My mom and my dad's roots are from Florida. I was born and raised in New York City, but my dad is from St. Augustine, which is the oldest town in America. My mom is from Western Pennsylvania, but her father was from Pensacola, Florida. And, you know, there's a lot of, and now we see right now with Florida trying to erase history, right? But that didn't just start now. they've been miseducating people. And this idea that we all came from Africa is extremely exaggerated, okay? I have never met a black American that doesn't have a lot of indigenous blood. There may be a little bit of African in there, but a lot of us are like completely copper-complected people indigenous to this land. And like I said, you can't always go by phenotypes, but generally speaking, people over here don't necessarily look like West Africans, okay? You might find some people who do a little bit, but there's a distinct difference, right? Like I said, when I was a kid and growing up around a whole bunch of Dominicans, to me, they look like my family. But when I was in Senegal, I didn't feel like they looked like my family, right? So, and that says a lot with the fact that blacks at that time in the 1820s was like, people can think, you have black people now talking about, oh, I want to go back to Africa, which there's no back to Africa to me because I have no connection to Africa. There's nowhere in my bloodline is there documented proof or connection to Africa, right? And when it comes to slavery, a lot of people don't know the indigenous people on this land, the copper-complected people on this land were enslaved. There were more indigenous American Indians shipped out of Charleston, South Carolina to be enslaved in other parts of the Americas and in Europe than there was Africans that came in through the port of Charleston, South Carolina. And we know that was like one of the largest slave ports. So when they talk about the transatlantic slave trade, it wasn't just Africans coming here. It was also American Indians being shipped out. And American Indians were also enslaved on this land. And then the colonizers started miscategorizing people. Okay, this is very well documented. There's several books I can recommend. I've been talking about this and studying this for years. But the colonizers started misnaming people, taking American Indians and putting them in African garb and calling them Africans. And so there's been a lot of miseducation, okay? But so it's interesting to me that a Haitian president, okay, opened the doors for black Americans to come here when they were trying to ship them back to Africa. The Haitian president wasn't like, oh yeah, we should all go back to Africa. The black Americans who were living in, racist America wasn't trying to go back to Africa. That tells you something. Maybe because they're not from there, okay? Maybe because that's not home. That's not home, okay? The Americas is home. And that's how I feel. Even with food, you know what I'm saying? Like, I went to Senegal and I was thinking about going to Ghana with my credit card points. But somebody I know who's been to Ghana several times started showing me pictures of the food. And I'm telling you, none of it looked appetizing to me. None of it. And honestly, like the only African food that really moves me is Ethiopian food. But I'd much rather eat the food in South America or the Caribbean than African food. Like it doesn't, cooking in palm oil. I mean, even though Brazilians do cook in palm oil, but it just doesn't resonate with me in the same way. You know what I'm saying? And so that can say something. But anyhow, so there was a man named Richard Allen, and I'm not an expert in this history, and I will post videos below on my YouTube channel, but there was a man named Richard Allen who was like, at the time, in the 1820s, he was equivalent to Martin Luther King. He was equivalent to Obama. He was equivalent to Frederick Douglass, okay? That's the status he had as a black American, and he could get snatched up and sent into slavery at any moment, okay? So that tells you a lot about what it was even like at that time. And so these black Americans, and so now I find out with Samana, it's a lot of Philly people that went there, which is interesting because I also have Philly in my history. My dad, actually, who's from St. Augustine, Florida, and was a black revolutionary. My dad will be 81 at the end of this month. And next week, my dad will be 81. When he left Florida at 19 and went to Philly, okay? And Philly was where his whole involvement in the movement, where Queen Mother Moore became his mentor. And he became very much involved in the Black Power movement and civil rights before he came to Harlem. He was in Philly. He talks about it a lot. And so I find that very interesting, okay, that it was all these Philly black people. Now, with Samana, it wasn't just Philly black people. There were black people from North Carolina, from different parts of the Americas. Now, going back to my trip to North Carolina in 2007, this Afro-Dominican woman who was talking about Samana, this was a dance conference. And she said that all her life she always wanted to come to Louisiana, okay? She always dreamed of it. And she talked about this dance called Bambula. Bambula is a dance that they do in Samana that was still very much alive, but she said it came from Louisiana. New Orleans, Congo Square. It's very well documented that there was a dance called Bambula that they did. Also, an Afro-Puerto Rican bomba. Afro-Puerto Rican bomba, which is a dance style and music style from Puerto Rico, they also have a rhythm called bambula, song called bambula, okay? So again, the Americas has a very intertwined history. So I always knew that, but I didn't know this Philly thing, and I didn't know about these other Black Americans. So now this was 1820s. Now, 200 years later, okay, we're in 2023 right now. They are these Black Americans who went to some and I really tried hard to maintain their culture. And they say a lot of them really maintained Afro-American culture. And their English is not as good, but they tend to speak English, but since it's 200 years removed, okay, they are definitely Spanish speakers. But they maintained English better than a lot of, I don't know anybody from a Spanish-speaking country that would be removed from it for 200 years and still speaking Spanish, so that's actually pretty impressive. And it was really interesting to look at these videos because I'm looking at a woman, she sounds Dominican, and she's talking about, when she's like, if I go to New York, they call me Dominican. But I'm just as much Black American. Black American is my roots. That's where I come from. And nobody would ever think that she was Black American. Not because of her looks, but just because she sounds very Dominican. Okay? Like, you don't hear that. And I found that so interesting because growing up in New York City, I grew up around people. I had a lot of Caribbean friends. Okay? So I would hear, like, even one of my really good friends, he's from Honduras. Like, his parents are Jamaican. Then they went to Honduras for 1 year, one generation, and then came to the U.S. But they do speak Spanish, and they didn't teach him Spanish. And he gets upset all the time that his parents, he's 50, in his mid-50s, he's upset all the time that his parents didn't teach him Spanish back in the day. And I've grown up with Puerto Rican friends and different friends that come from Spanish-speaking countries where their parents didn't, sometimes Panamanians, where their parents didn't teach them Spanish, okay? So now they feel disconnected from their family. But also in America, they might feel like, I'm Panamanian. But then they go to Panama, and Panamanians are like, you're not Panamanian. You don't even speak the language. You weren't born here. And I know that's something that first generation, probably even second, third generations go through. And myself, I never really saw, like, if somebody is Haitian American or Jamaican American, I don't see them as the same American as me, because I'm like, the foods we eat at home, the music we listen to, like, there's different cultural differences. Like, you're Jamaican American, but like in your root, you're really Jamaican, right? And so it was, now I'm looking at the reverse with this woman who was like, yeah, I'm Dominican. My family been here but I'm really American. That's my roots. And you see them talking about how English is in their blood, okay? So to me, that's the same way that people from Spanish-speaking countries feel in America, that Spanish is in their blood. And they want to learn Spanish or maintain Spanish. So it was the reverse. And I'm just like, you see, this is and I've always believed, because I also found out there's a lot of Dominicans, I know there's a lot of Dominicans in Massachusetts and stuff. And I used to wonder why did so many of them settle, whether it's Haitians, Dominicans, and other Caribbeans, like, why did so many of them settle so far up north? And when you study and there's multiple reasons probably, but when you study the history, you understand that there was Indian slavery in this country, and they took lots of Indians, okay, copper-complected indigenous people from North America, from Turtle Island. They took them and shipped them to be enslaved in the Caribbean. There's a lot of people from North America, indigenous people, brown people, who were shipped to the Caribbean to be enslaved. And as a dancer, and so to me, I'm thinking maybe they're coming back because this is where they're originally from, okay? They could be Dominican, they could be Jamaican, they could be Haitian, but maybe their bloodline really came from North America, and it has been there for a few generations. And maybe some of the people in America who, like myself, who considers myself very American, maybe our bloodline came from the Caribbean a few generations ago. I mean, my family's from Florida. My dad is from St. Augustine, the oldest town in America. And St. Augustine was the northernmost point in the Spanish Empire, okay? The northernmost point in the Spanish Empire. It's the oldest city in America. There's a huge connection between St. Augustine and Matanzas, Cuba, okay? And I could explain me and my dad's huge connection to Afro-Cuban drumming and Afro-Cuban music. I have a huge affinity for Afro-Latin shit, especially Cuba. And then I have a huge affinity for Haiti, okay? I love Haitian people. I love Haitian food. I love Haitian music and their dancing. I mean, Haitian art, even in Dominican Republic, all the amazing art is Haitian. But I think Haitian art is the best in the Caribbean, okay? That's just, but I really resonate with that. Perhaps that is because my bloodline is from Florida. There's a lot of back and forth. Maybe, and Matanzas, Cuba, Matanzas means massacres, okay? The blacks in Florida, and Florida now is a different breed, because the blacks in Florida, the Florida my dad came from, black people in Florida were did not believe in nonviolence. There were black scholars. They were fighters. They were the best organizers. Okay, that was the legacy of Florida. And I feel like a lot of those people must have left, because the Florida that is this now, even what's going on with Ron DeSantis, I don't see any black people in Florida doing anything or saying anything. They're just silent. If they tried to erase black history like that in New York, you best to believe people would be speaking about it. You know what I'm saying? Or probably even in Chicago too. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure they would in Atlanta. And I'm sure they probably would in New Orleans. But Florida, black people ain't saying nothing. Ron DeSantis is just acting like we ain't going, you a freaking white foreigner and you're trying to erase our history. The hell with that shit. So I'm just saying, there was a lot of island hopping. There was a lot of hopping in the Americas. People going from North America to the Caribbean, North America to South America, South America to the Caribbean, and vice versa. There was a lot of that. So the Americas has an intertwined history. And studying dances of the diaspora, I always say I study Afro-diasporic dances, but particularly in the Americas. I don't really study African dance. There's a difference between African dance and black dance over here. I have extensively studied Afro-Haitian folklore, Afro-Puerto Rican bomba y plena, some Afro-Colombian stuff, which I want to study more of, some Afro-Peruvian stuff, which I want to study more of, a little bit of Afro-Venezuelan, which I want to study more of. I've studied some Afro-Dominican palos y congos, and then I grew up around Dominicans, so of course I know how to dance merengue and bachata. I know how to dance salsa because I grew up in New York. And what else? Of course I grew up in New York in the dancehall era, so there's that too. I don't know what other countries, okay? And the Congo. And then Afro-Americans have a bunch of dances. We have Lindy Hop, which is known as swing, but black people call it Lindy Hop, which comes from Harlem, my hood. Then there's Chicago swing, which comes from, it's derived from Lindy Hop. I mean, it's not Chicago swing, sorry, Chicago step. Chicago step derives from Lindy Hop and swing in Harlem. Then you have, DC go-go. You got New Orleans second line, which is off the chain. You got bounce from New Orleans. You got twerking, okay? Tap dance. I mean, there's so many different dances. I don't even know all the black American dances. But I started realizing I know more about stuff in the Caribbean than I do about my own stuff from my people here. But again, maybe I resonate with certain things because maybe that's where my bloodline was actually from a few generations ago or whatever. We never know. I'm just saying, and that's why I love holidays. Looking at what people cook. Because even in America, it's so wide and varied, and so I'm gonna be talking for a long time, but I'm just saying, like, I don't just travel places just for the superficial, to be like, oh, let me go here and stay in this resort, and oh, it's a beautiful beach, and I'm just gonna go to the beautiful beach, and that shit is superficial, and I have reasons why I go places, and I'm definitely interested in the history of where I'm at. Whether I'm in America or anywhere else in the world, I'm interested in the history. And people do not need, okay, to depend on schools to teach them that. Read a fucking book, okay? Read books. If you have, and not Google, okay, not Chat GPT, but pick up a book, books that were written by scholars who research and have many sources and know what they're talking about, okay? Don't trust Google to tell you stuff because that's what dumbs people down, okay? And if you have kids, make them read, okay? When I was growing up, I cannot understand all these kids sitting there with iPads all the time. Read a book. I don't see no kids reading anything, okay? And a kid holding an iPad is bad for their health. They're being zapped with all kinds of radiation. It's bad for adults, but it's definitely bad for children. And the fastest growing rate of cancer is in children, okay? So read. Like, damn. Now, I mean, to me, there's just no excuse for the ignorance nowadays. And a lot of the history I learned wasn't in school. A lot of the history I learned was from my family. So when people are just making it, I don't know, I'm not going to get into that. But that's the thing about Samana. So I'm in Santo Domingo for a few days. And then I will go to Las Tarenas, okay? And I'm sure I will come back here in the future, maybe go to other parts of the island. It's like every single country, no matter how big or small it is, has different regions that are different, have different histories, different cultures, different influences, okay? I've been to Haiti before. I went to Haiti in 2010. And so now I'm in the Dominican Republic, and I'm going to see what the vibe is here. I just got here last night, so I don't have a lot to report. But they do have Uber Eats, which is good in Santo Domingo. They have Starbucks, so I can get my matcha because I'm a tea drinker. And a lot of times in Latin America, they're not about tea, so it's all about coffee. And I don't like coffee. I like to have my matcha. So those are things that I like. I actually understand the people here when they're speaking Spanish, but I grew up in the Heights. I don't understand Dominicans in the Heights, what they're saying. Like, the neighborhood that I grew up in, you have to speak some Spanish in order to function. But when I'm walking around, I've been hearing Spanish all my life. Like, that is my habitat. Like, I feel at home when I'm hearing Spanish everywhere, because that's how I grew up, right? But the Dominicans that I grew up around, I don't be understanding. I know que lo que, but I don't be knowing what they be saying. But, like, here in Santo Domingo, I have understood fine. You know what I'm saying? And something about Latin America, like, I just always feel very at home in Latin America. So, and you could say I'm from I'm from a Spanish colony. My bloodline comes from a Spanish colony of Florida, you know. But anywho, I just wanted to say that, give you a little intro about Santo Domingo. I'm going to go on about my day. If you guys have anything, if you've been to Santo Domingo and there's anything you want to tell me to check out or whatever, let me know. And I will do an updated video once I've seen some things and have some more to report. This is just my little intro, first impressions, and so you can see my Airbnb. Okay, so yeah, I'm about to go outside and get some sun on my skin so I can get darker. And yeah, I have a lot to report. I'm interested in the men because we all know that men come to Dominican Republic a lot of times, not all of them, but a lot of them come here searching for women. And you don't hear too much about women going on trip searching for men or anything like that. Or, like, even in my experiences in Latin America, in Cuba, the men were very aggressive, like in New York. They were constantly trying to talk to me, but I feel like people in Cuba constantly try to talk to everybody because they can't go anywhere, so they just love outsiders. But Cuba also, people look very much like me and my family, except the people there were people in Cuba who were blacker than they were like literally the color black. Like, I've never seen anybody in America that dark. I've never seen anybody when I was in Haiti and Jamaica that was that dark, and there's a lot of dark-skinned people. But in Cuba and Colombia, that's where I've seen like people who are like tar black, like black, okay? And even one of my Nigerian friends, we were in Cuba, he was like, he grew up in Nigeria, he had never seen people that dark. He said they look like they're from Sudan, right? So the people that look like that didn't look like my family, but everybody else, like in Cuba, like a lot of them couldn't tell I wasn't from there. And in Cuba, they love hair, they love braids. Cuba and Colombia love braids and stuff. So me having my hair like this, that's what you see, right? But I'm interested in I'm like, for my own personal research, I'm interested in see what these dudes are about. Because it's funny because growing up in the Heights, Dominican men, like, I remember when I was like young, like 18, 19, when Dominican men in my neighborhood would like whistle at me or whatever, I always would be like, who are they talking to? I always thought they were talking to somebody else, because Dominican women always had amazing bodies. Like, I feel like some of the best bodies in New York City are uptown, okay? The Heights, Harlem Heights, and the Bronx, okay? I feel like they got Brooklyn beat. Sorry, no offense, Brooklyn. But Dominican women had crazy bodies. So I never thought anybody was talking to me, okay? So then I'm like, oh, for Dominican men in my neighborhood to give me a compliment, that's a pretty big compliment, because Dominican women look amazing. So do Haitian women. Some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life are from Haiti, right? So if a Haitian man gives me a compliment, it's also a big, because I'm like, y'all have a lot of beautiful women. Like, to me, they have a high bar. But the thing is that in my neighborhood, Dominican men never tried to talk, like, never tried to get my number. They would tell me, oh, you're beautiful, God bless you, right? Very pleasant. You're beautiful, God bless you. God bless you. But they never asked me for my phone number, or never tried to get at me like that. I feel like Dominicans in New York, they don't really assimilate that much. Like, you hear about Puerto Rican, people who are Puerto Rican and Black American, but you rarely hear about somebody who's Dominican and Black American, okay? Cardi is changing that, because Cardi, she had a child with a Black American. A lot of people don't know Cardi is half Trinidadian. And Cardi's also from my area, in New York. And so, yeah, so I'm like, okay, people always talking about the women, but I wonder what these dudes are like. So that's my other I'm curious about the Dominican men in the Dominican Republic. I'm curious about the food and the food systems. And I definitely will be talking about that on my other page, The Body Scientist, and the history. Okay, so you can get updates about all that in my future videos. And again, you can either go on YouTube and look up Samana, okay? I saw like 3 or 4 different videos yesterday that all had different pieces of history, but Samana, Dominican Republic, and they say, you know, it's the town that African Americans. I really don't like that term African Americans, because to me, African Americans are people whose parents come from Africa. And that becomes confusing, you know. And again, a lot of Black Americans aren't African descent, okay? But that's a whole nother long historical conversation. If you want me to point you towards some books that go into this history and these facts in depth, I will. And for now, I'm just gonna let you go and have a good day, and I'm gonna go enjoy my day. Okay? Thanks for listening. Bye, people.